Hi everyone, welcome to We Belong Education podcast. I am with my co-host Helen. Helen, how are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Good. We're recording on a weekend, which is
We are. I
yeah.
mean, you've just had a little bit of a break
hmm
from, I suppose, work. I don't know if it was a relaxing break, but
hmm Work and family.
you've
Hey,
had your family visiting here from India.
yeah, my niece and nephew gave me a hard time. Oh, sorry, I should say I had a hard time. My apartment is not children friendly, put it this way. Um, Well, so as we have a break, we thought of recording a podcast on a very important topic, which we have been discussing for a while, and we have had chats on it. Philosophies. And what is philosophy? What is philosophical thinking? Do we even care about philosophy? Is it even a topic to discuss? But I think that we have a really good content or discussion around it, Helen.
Mm,
And I wanted to start with how you categorized philosophy or
hmm
different types of philosophies, and I want to hear from you and let's then take it forward from there. So all yours now, Helen, please.
Well, to let our listeners in, when you first rang me the other day and said, "Hey, Helen, let's record a podcast on philosophy," I said, "Oh, it's that thing you keep on the wall." Uh, but
Exactly.
no, it should be an embodiment. It should be a
Mm,
living thing. But we were just talking earlier before we press record that my kind of ideas around philosophy are that you have a personal philosophy, which is your personal core values,
mhm.
beliefs, and principles. You have an educational one, which is, and I've got notes just here because we knew I wouldn't remember what I was going to say. You've got your educational, which again is the beliefs and values in regards to teaching
Mhm.
for the and learning. And then you've got your institutional or your service level one, which is the collective set of beliefs and values and the goals that underpin the service or setting.
Yeah.
Um, Again, we're being a bit naughty and saying, yes, it should be collective, but we know sometimes just one person has written that and put on the wall. But we can dive
Yes,
deeper
we
into
can
that
dive.
later.
Yeah, so I wrote it down as you were speaking, Helen.
Mhm,
So personal,
mhm,
educational,
mhm.
and institutional. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a really good categorization of philosophical thinking. But I want to take one step back. When you were
Mhm,
talking about the personal philosophy, you said core values and beliefs.
mhm,
Yeah. So
mhm.
would you say philosophy, if we were just to talk about philosophies prior to categorization, different types of philosophies, would you say that philosophy is something which is our core values, belief system, set of those things constitute what our philosophy is? Would you say that?
Oh, I'm scared now because I know like you taught philosophy for so long and I might get the answer wrong. But yeah, I
No,
mean,
no. That's my answer. Yes, yes is the answer for me. I'm just
okay,
asking.
great.
Like, do you think that's what you? Yeah, right. I like how you went. Damn, it's a test now. No, I don't know anything. I don't know all about philosophy. I was just asking, is that what you think? Core values and belief? Yeah.
Yeah, what are
Um,
your principles? I
oh,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
if I'm being
Mm.
hopefully our listeners are getting to know my weird sense of humor, but like if I was going to say at the simplest, my personal philosophy is don't be a dick.
Okay.
Sorry, r rude words,
But
but
that's
like
that's difficult. That's too much of expectation, Helen. Come on, you. Ah, because when we are one, we don't think we are being one. We think everybody else is being one. Yeah.
no, but if I'm going deeper as a person,
Yeah.
I believe that,
Yeah. That's
you
your
know,
core belief.
you should be kind to
All
everyone.
right.
Well, we don't always like
Oh.
everyone, but
Mm,
just accepting of who someone is. It doesn't matter what their beliefs,
mm,
gender, whatever, any of those things,
mm.
just, be
Be
accepting of
nice
a
to them. Yeah.
person. Be nice, yeah, be nice
Okay.
to people.
Yeah. It's so tough to be nice, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, I the reason I ask you that question because when I had the pleasure of teaching philosophy,
Mm,
uh, there was a way I used to introduce philosophical thinking. And this is
Mm,
taking a couple of steps back prior to categorization of different types of philosophies. Yeah.
hmm
And the way we used to introduce philosophical thinking to our student was that philosophical thinking can be divided into three parts. And now, watch the language though. I'm not saying philosophy can be divided into three parts. I'm saying philosophical thinking can be
mm,
divided into three parts. And they were that philosophical thinking is critical. Step one, critical. Critical being um, really asking that question, why do you believe, as you said, core belief? Why do you have that core belief?
mm,
Where did it come from? Do you believe in it? Was it given to you? Why do you think the way you think? Why do you believe the way you believe in?
mm,
That's first critical thinking. Second was dialectical. That is, philosophical thinking is dialectical, as in you say something, I say something, I tell you my core belief, you tell me your core belief,
mm,
non-judgmentally. And that's a tough thing to do. You will say something to me, and I'll be like, I don't agree with that. But that's
mm,
okay, because that's
mm.
exactly what dialogical thinking is. To
Yeah.
have a debate in a layman's term, to have a healthy debate on
Mm,
that. Yeah. And the final step is that after debating is to create a philosophy, because any philosophy that you and I believe in or have it is been created, isn't it? It wasn't just handed over. It
mm-hmm,
was originally created somewhere, and then you and I started subscribing to that.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me say it again. It's critical. Why do I
Mm-hmm,
believe in the way why do I believe in things the way I believe in things? Or
mm,
why do I believe in this uh, um, system or ideology?
mm-hmm,
Hang on a sec. What was second? What does Helen believe in and why?
mm,
Non-judgmentally, I listen to her. I argue with her, and then Helen and I decide to create a philosophy,
mm-hmm,
which could be, as you said, this institutional or
mm-hmm,
service philosophy. But to get there, we would have to be critical of our own self, wouldn't it? Like
mm,
we'll have to start with that. So
mm.
I was thinking if it's okay to discuss some of our own core beliefs and see how we role model creating philosophy. How does that sound? Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I'm just if we're role modeling creating philosophy, my we know I like to simplify things, and my three notes I just wrote on what you said
Mm-hmm.
was the first step. If we're taking that step back, our
Mm-hmm.
first step is what is our thinking. Our
Yeah.
second step is the debate or the discussion with
Yeah.
somebody else, and then the
Mm.
third step is the creation.
Yes. But
So,
think about the first step, how difficult that is, though. It
mm,
is to, we'll have to stop and think, won't it?
mm,
But we don't, okay, one may say, I don't have time to stop and think. I
mm,
just think this way. This is me. Accept it. Take it or leave it. That's
yep,
usually the argument you would get when you ask the question why, because it's an annoying question to, let's face it.
mm,
And why do you believe in it? So if I say, why do you think that we should be nice to others? Okay, and you're like, duh, we should be. Like, but why? If I ask you that question three times, you'll slap me. Like, go away, Saurabh. It's just common sense. But it's
mm,
such a difficult, I believe, it is the most difficult thing to in philosophical thinking is to argue with yourself first.
mm.
Why do I believe in it? Now psychologically one may call it metacognition, thinking about thinking.
I agree with you, although I do think lots of people in the education space, because we are so good at critically reflecting,
Okay, yeah.
we often are quite good at thinking about the why. Although I do acknowledge the why in relation to us, I
Mm,
don't know how deeply we think on that point.
yeah, it's easy to argue with others, like why do you believe in it?
Mm,
It's hard to argue with ourselves, and therefore in psychological terms, although we are doing a philosophy podcast, in psychological term, metacognition is considered as a tough thing. It's not an easy thing to think about yourself.
mm,
Reflect. It's easy to observe,
mm,
hard to reflect.
mm.
It's easy to observe that you're wrong. It's hard to reflect that I was wrong. Okay. So,
There's something in there. I mean, look, I'm not going to take it too far one way because I
mhm.
realize what I'm about to say could put us completely on another
Go on,
path.
please.
But there's something in there also about ego and
Yeah.
that thing of,
Let me know.
that you're never going to afford. I mean, some people might, but I know me myself, I wouldn't normally come forward and go, I've been really thinking to myself and thinking about my why. And this is what, like,
Mm,
we don't always like to, I suppose, come forward with, I don't know, we don't always like to stand on a soapbox and promote ourselves. Well,
right.
some people do. I mean, I know a certain doctor who who doesn't have a problem with it,
I don't,
but
yeah. Yeah.
that
Hmm.
also might link into why it's tricky to have that
Hmm.
internal debate of our why because there's something not so comfortable about that.
Yeah. And as I said, if you were to think psychologically, that's called metacognition. But if you think
Mm,
spiritually, you can call it consciousness. Are
mm,
you conscious of your actions? Are you conscious of your
mm,
belief system? You
mm, mm,
stop and
mm.
you think, okay, I think this way. Why? and
Yeah.
that's and that's a, and you're bringing consciousness into your thought process, so you
Mm,
can see it in many ways, but unfortunately, and I'm saying it, this is the kindest word I can give to it, unfortunately, the society only observes the behavior because that's the only observable thing. So
mm,
when you observe a behavior, you put your ideology and philosophy on that behavior. For
mm,
example, as you said, someone would be comfortable in talking about themselves, and you may put that ideology on him and say, oh, but that person may be egotistical, whereas the other person would say, oh, that's self-expression. And that's a
mm,
contribution. So in this society, it is so easy to accept, I suck at it, and
mm,
then your friends would say, oh, me too. It is
mm,
so easy to accept I suck at it narrative versus I'm confident at it narrative. So if you
mm,
say I'm confident at it, your friends would say, "Are you sure?" But if
mm.
you say I suck at it, you say, "Oh, me too, sister," or "Me too, brother." So it is so okay to be so critical about yourself, but it's so not okay to be confident because that could be seen as, one may call it, the narcissist behavior. You see how the society also puts their ideology on somebody's behavior, which is fine, but again, it kind of allows us to dig deeper and say, okay, is behavior or manifested behavior the only way to measure someone's thought process or philosophy
Mm,
behind it? Yeah. I have been thinking since in the last half an hour that, okay, you mentioned three aspects: personal,
mm,
educational, and institutional.
mm,
Can we talk about personal philosophies from the context of educational philosophies, given that our podcast talks
mhm,
mainly to educators and parents?
mm.
How does that sound? Yeah.
Yep, great.
So, in education, would you believe that your philosophy has shifted as you grew up, as a personal philosophy towards education shifted or is influenced by something as you
Mm.
grew up as an educator?
I think it's interesting because I think I've spoken about this before that in the past, like when obviously the educator I was 20-ish years ago is not the educator I am
Mm,
now, but I
mm,
still think I have some of the same core beliefs that I used to have, which is I don't know, just the value in every individual child, in the meeting them where they're at.
mm,
I've always kind of had that philosophy. As I started to do my degree and get some understanding around educational theory and stuff like that, I came to realize that I was probably a humanist.
mm.
But yeah, I think I've always had I've probably always had this theory, this philosophy, but maybe in the past didn't have the words for what
Uh-huh.
I
Mhm.
thought.
Right, right.
Mm,
And because you mentioned humanist,
mm,
can I share some of how I wasn't necessarily a humanist to start with?
hmm.
I may subscribe to it.
Yep.
But before I do that, I want to tell our audience about something that I've been thinking of since our last episode on emotional well-being. Those who
Mm,
haven't heard it, please go and hear it. It's awesome. We think it's awesome, but um, we don't talk in absolute in this podcast.
mm,
Or if we do come across as we are talking in absolute, then we have miscommunicated.
mm,
That is when we say something, because it's just Helen and I and some guests talking. It
Mm,
doesn't have your views in it, the
mm,
audience's views in it. So, of course, we are not saying this is it. We're saying
mm,
there's a variation in it, which you may agree to some extent, not
mm,
100%. So, when Helen says she's a humanist or her philosophy aligns with humanism, and I say I am too, just check. And I have a small journey towards humanism.
mm,
And in education, these three particular philosophical paradigms are very popular, and they are seen at many places. Okay,
mm,
so one of them, the first one I would say, and I'm following the timeline of their existence or
mm,
their recognition. First one was behaviorism. Easy.
mm,
Pavlov, Skinner, Thorndike, doing
mhm,
experiments on animals and salivation among dogs, or the doll theory by Bandura, that he would punish a doll and then children will look at it and say, well, we don't want to have that punishment, so they will just die.
mm,
And that's where we also have conversation on positive reinforcement, negative
mm,
reinforcement, um, reward system. All of this is behaviorism.
mm,
That behaviorism believed that learning occurs only if behaviors are aligned to it. So
mm,
if I say sit down and you're not sitting down, I'm gonna assume that you don't know how to follow instructions.
mm.
And that's so popular. Even now, we will say, hey, look how great Johnny is sitting. Come on, you sit down too. Like, this is the positive
Mm,
reinforcement. You say, look, Johnny is doing the right thing, you do it. And then maybe verbal or some reward that they get. Yeah,
mm,
nothing wrong with this. It's popular, it's seen, and but when it happens, do you know? I mean, I'm not talking to you, Helen, here. Do we know that that's behaviorism,
mm.
or do we just do it because it was done to us and therefore we do it?
Or just because
You know,
we've tried everything and that's finally the thing that works.
yeah, we tried everything. Uh, like this reward system works, so I'm just gonna keep doing it, isn't it? Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying, where does this stem from?
Mm.
And we can discuss just that question till the cows come home. But I'm just asked. This would be.
Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I think Saurabh let people in on this. We only discussed half an hour before we we he did ring me the other day and say, "Hey, at some stage I want to do a podcast on philosophy." We did have another one booked this week that we were going to do. So on another topic. So my brain wasn't even thinking
Yeah.
about philosophy. So then half an hour ago, when we just had the discussion of yes, okay, we've both got some time today on a Saturday,
Mhm.
let's do a recording. Um, I had a quick thought before we jumped into this video, trying to think about am I actually a humanist? Because
Mhm.
at some stage, at some time, I'll admit, I thought, oh, that seems like an easy one. Like when the AO says, oh, "What theory do you?" I'm a humanist.
Yeah.
That's like
Okay.
just easy.
Easy.
But no, I think I went through some points today just because I wanted to check. And I just wrote down that a humanist sees the potential of all
Hmm.
to learn, grow, contribute
Hmm.
meaningfully to the world.
Hmm.
A humanist prioritizes well-being and flourishing, although
Hmm.
then I got a bit in my head and I'm like, well, I admitted to the listeners the other day I didn't look after my own well-being too well. But that's the next
Yes.
conversation. That's the
Hmm.
next
Hmm.
one on
Hmm.
well-being, the next podcast. Um, that a humanist prioritizes um the emotional, intellectual,
Okay.
also ethical. But
Hmm.
then one I really also like, and I think I strongly believe in, is that also a humanist looks at ethics, but not religion.
Okay. So let's take
So
that.
if,
Yeah.
sorry, one sec, if I take a step back and because I
Hmm.
was trying to think of why did I resonate when I first was doing my degree and learning about what is
Hmm.
humanism? Why did I resonate with it so much? And I think um, for our listeners, I don't know if I shared this before, but I have dyslexia, and so I struggled through school. School was
Hmm.
horrendous for me. It was horrible. And no one ever adjusted the environment for me. No one helped me. I just literally, the only environment adjustment I ever got is I think at some stage in year four, the teacher decided that if I had my desk bumped up right against his, that would somehow help.
Right.
But no one like
Mhm.
did like extra support, looked at, there was no differentiating lessons when I was in primary
Mhm.
school.
Mhm.
I mean, it was so bad I actually couldn't read till year seven.
Yeah.
So
Eh,
I
mm,
think if I really, and we also don't like reflecting on some of those things. So I think I can identify now that maybe why humanism resonated so much for me is it was the thing that I didn't get.
yeah. Okay. So it could, and I'm not
Mm.
saying it is, but because you know the value of something because you know what the absence of it would feel like
Yeah, and also my view on children is that I never want a child to feel that
to
way.
feel that way. Yeah.
Mm.
Now let's critique behaviorism from that
Please.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
So as I said, there are three of them
Hmm.
in the line, and not three. Again, it's not absolute term. We there are many more, but
Mm,
the three that I wanted to just highlight: behaviorism, cognitivism,
mm,
humanism.
mm,
So let's say you're at the stage three, humanism.
mm,
I'm talking about stage one. Okay. If you were to look at emotional well-being, if you were to look at dyslexia, if you were to look at going back to emotional, that somebody is having a bad day, that person may not be able to perform. Yes,
mm.
behaviorally speaking,
Yeah.
sitting quietly, sitting in two lines, sitting in three lines,
Mm,
sitting quietly till the roll is called of everyone.
mm,
Yeah, following instructions because that person is emotionally not calm. There's a
mm,
storm going on. And then we say, all right, those who are quiet and listening to me will get food first.
mm,
And the child who is already hungry is now hangry.
mm,
Yeah, he's hungry, he's fidgety because something has happened and doesn't know how to regulate emotions. Emotions are physiological. So when you are stressed, your body shows it,
mm,
but that could be for a behaviorist because they only saw the behavior,
mm,
would look like you're disrespecting me, and
mm,
thereby you get the food last. Now,
mm,
thank you connection is gone because now we have a connection where it's like the negative connection that you hate me.
mm,
Okay. Or just bring your desk towards me and that will fix it. Yeah.
mm,
And therefore, but I was a behaviorist
mm,
because that's how I grew up. So I was like, okay, if you can't sit in two lines, we're not going for excursion. Okay, and and oh, here's a reward for you. Here's a reward for that. Yeah. So it
mm,
used to happen. Like when we have Milo at some of the services, and like, okay, we have this Milo to give. Those who will pack up will get the Milo, or those who will do this will get to lick the bowl of cake. Oh, chocolate, whatever that is. Yeah, they would get reward something.
mm,
Majority of my initial years was a behaviorism, and I did not know that that was what I was doing
mm,
because it had happened to me. So let's have a look at what are some of the philosophies that, although it may not show up on your wall, people do that, don't we? If you're quiet, you'll get food.
mm,
Listen, eyes on me when I'm talking to you, otherwise you're disrespecting me. Hey, look at Johnny. Johnny is sitting down. It's a positive reinforcement, and it is sold really
mm.
well in schooling and in education terms. So nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, catch it that it's a behaviorism. That's all I'm asking to do.
Yeah, and I think to some extent I probably did start off in that more
Mm,
behaviorist side of things on
mhm.
you'll respect me, I'm an adult. We will all
Yeah.
sit, we will all do this. But
Mm,
I don't know. I think I went on a super hard and fast journey on
yeah.
why are we doing this? It's actually making us more, the kids don't want to do it. It's making us more stressed. So yeah, super, super quick journey. But I do remember at the very beginning, yeah, having
Yeah.
some of those thoughts as well. And oh, look at my beautiful friends here doing what we've asked them, like that
Exactly.
kind
Exactly. Yeah. Look at them. Look at them. Look at the role model. And meanwhile, Helen was looking at thinking, the young Helen, thinking, yeah, they are just so what? those just want, they just like you, therefore they're doing it. I still hate you, you know, like that. So I'm not gonna. But we're thinking they're disrespecting us, and that's why cognitivism came in because we
Mm,
had the MRI machines, and
mm,
cognitivists such as Piaget, Vygotsky, Bandura could be known as a cognitivist as well. And we got so many theories on, by this age, children are this, by that age, children are this.
mm,
Zone of proximal development we got from Vygotsky, sociocultural theory we got from Vygotsky. And they pioneered this cognitivist way, which
mm,
meant that behaviors are not the only indicators. We also have to understand what's happening in the brain. Yeah.
mm,
Uh, and that kind of changed my view also because then I started thinking, okay, what are people thinking? What
mm.
are children thinking? What are they thinking about me? And therefore, interviewing started happening,
Yeah.
conversations started
Mm,
happening. Yeah. So I can see in my life from adult centric, you behave or you are the right person because you behave correctly, to why are you behaving the way you're behaving? Yeah. That just shifted a little bit.
mm,
Uh, And so, why are you behaving the way you're behaving? Started with the questioning.
mm.
Hey, what do you think about this institution? What's going on over here? Like, things started changing. And I know I spent a lot of time in that stage of my life too. Helen, what do you
Mm.
think? Now that I'm putting you on spot about cognitivism, as in
Mm.
thinking about what's happening in the brain, did you, as you're getting to humanism, did you have that kind of time in your life as well?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think about exactly when it happened, but if if we're talking about the switch of when I started to look at why is this happening,
Hmm.
what is going on for those children, I think actually funny. I've been doing a lot of training with our teams lately, and I've been talking about this a lot.
Hmm.
One, I've been saying to our staff, if you want to know what's going wrong in your service, like actually ask the kids, ask them about a specific process you're doing which is not working. And
Mm.
I guarantee 80% of the time they will have the answer. Like,
Yeah.
for example, we know I started my life in Ush, and we did start my life in that everyone has to come in and sit inside the room and then we mark that roll off one by one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very old school, very, very you know, classroom style of
Hmm.
marking the roll and but doesn't also, yes, might work in a class of 20 kids, doesn't always work in a room
Yeah,
of
yeah,
why are we trying to put 50 children in a room? And
yeah.
like that,
Or
that's a whole
100,
nother
or
story.
100.
Or 100, and then, mark roll one by one.
Yeah.
So starting to look at the why of the behavior. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Hmm.
Acting, it's too loud in there. They've
Yeah.
just been sitting in class all day,
Hmm.
trying their hardest. If I reflect back to my life,
Mm.
um, actually, side note insight, and this might be taking it too far into behavior, but we'll stop and get our
Mm.
way back to philosophy. I remember something that really hit home hard for me in relation to how I view children's behavior. I met up with someone who knew me when I was young.
Mm.
And they actually spoke to me about that I was quite often badly behaved.
Mm.
I don't have a memory of that. I have a memory of trying really hard to make people happy. I
Hmm.
don't have a memory of being badly behaved. And
Right.
so I really thought about that a lot and it kind of, I suppose, helped me see that what we're seeing in children sometimes, I suppose we talk about behavior being communication.
Mm. Hmm.
They're not seeing what they're doing as behavior. They're just communicating. Because I
Yeah.
remember being really confused when this person said, "Oh yeah,
Hmm.
you used to be so bad all the time," and I was thinking, no, I have these. I don't have many childhood memories, but the ones I do, I have
Trying
of
really hard.
really trying so hard to please
Hmm.
those adults in my life.
Mm. Whereas,
So I
but that's
found it
not the
really.
impression others have. And look,
Mm,
again, it's not an absolute term. It's not that one day you were behaviorist and then you became cognitivist.
mm,
I am the only reason I'm saying all of this is because I really want people to ask this question, why? Why do I think the way I think? Because do
mm,
you see yourself in one of the behaviorism and cognitivism? And then came the humanism, the third stage,
mm,
which you so very well claim that you are a humanism, and that was
mm,
more so by Jacques Rousseau and Froebel, where they
mm,
said
mm,
children are competent.
Mm,
The connection is Carl Rogers also talks a lot about therapeutic relationship.
mm,
Maslow talks about Maslow's hierarchy. Sociology of childhood is another theoretical perspective which talks about children being active citizens,
mm,
competent,
mm,
mature. Now they are not citizens of socio-political world, but they are citizens of childhood.
mm,
And where, given that we are talking to children in their childhood, their voice is as important. As you just said, ask them, their voice is as important as an adult's voice in that. But a
mm,
behaviorist adult would not explore that option, because the behaviorist adult would say you behave, respect your elders, not respect your children.
mm,
Respect your elders. And if I've asked you to look at me when I'm talking to you, then you just look at me. There's nothing wrong with that because I was there. But I just want you to know, no, sorry, not know. I want you to expand and explore and examine,
mm,
am I that? And why am I that?
mm, mm,
Because in your team, when we were to create an institutional philosophy, maybe in your team, some of them are humanists, some of them are behaviorists, some of them are cognitivists, and some of them are still finding their way. Some of them are in transition, and some of them are highly conflicted.
mm,
So even if there is a paragraph written on your board or on your notice board about the
mm,
service or institutional philosophy, do we all believe in that? Or do we
mm,
like what it says, but our actions reflect differently?
mm. Well, funny you bring that up because just before we jumped on, I thought I'm going to go look up my first philosophy I ever wrote with my staff
Mm,
because I wanted to see. I mean, I could remember the gist, but I wanted to actually remember what we actually wrote and what we were communicating to our families.
mm.
And we know how much I love AI. This was written before AI. I'm really impressed with myself and my team.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
So it says, here at Tush, yes, we called ourselves Tush, our practice encourages inclusivity of the beliefs and cultures of all our families.
Mm,
We platform and highlight the multiculturalism and intersectional voices, foster a strong sense of diverse community. We
mm,
provide a safe and welcoming environment for children of Tush by creating open and transparent dialogue between children and educators. We believe in transparent communication and activities that nurture and challenge children's interests and expectations. We believe children should feel respected and valued while being offered a wide variety of activities that are ultimately based on their interests while being sympathetic to their abilities. Our highest priority is that children enjoy their time they spend with us.
mm,
Now, the reason I read this is I wrote that before I knew anything about humanism.
And it aligns so well. So therefore, it's not
Mm,
that you read somewhere and then you decided, oh, I am that. Many of us, which is a critical point here, many of us are already exhibiting a sign of
mm,
our alignment to
mm.
certain things. It
I have
would
a
be
question.
nice. Yeah,
I
go
have
on.
a question for you,
Mhm,
just because of where this is going.
mhm.
Can you be more than one?
Yeah, therefore I said it's not an absolute term.
Yeah, so
Oh,
can
of
you
course.
say I'm going to take these best bits
Yeah.
from humanism and these best bits from these
But there is a
behaviors?
problem.
Does that work?
I
Or
like
please
it. I
tell
like
me.
what I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying. But and listeners might be like, oh yeah, I will just take good ones from behaviorism, good ones from cognitivism, and a really good one from humanism, and I'm gonna be done.
Mm,
But we have to resolve tension, which
mm,
comes from merging two ideologies, merging two philosophies. So let me say it one more time. The three philosophies that we've just discussed is behaviorism.
mm,
Behavior is an indication of learning.
mm,
Second one was, it's not just behavior, what's happening in the mind. And the
mm,
third one, humanism, is to actually see competency and maturity in the person that you're talking to. Okay.
mm,
And more, by the way. Play is also an important part of humanism. Now, Helen's question was, can you be more than one? Yes. Uh, but when you just merge these ones, there's tension because there are reasons why these things were came into existence. So we have to realize why there is when we are adopting that. Hey, otherwise there will be an internal conflict. So let me say it again. Behaviorism actually puts teacher-centered approach. That is, I say something to you, your behavior will suggest if you were listening to me or not. Okay, this is a very layman's term on putting behaviorism. It's wider than that, but I'm just putting it up there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, humanism is about, hey, I'm gonna notice and I'm going to acknowledge and dignify your existence here. Now, so if you say I'm going to take good things from humanism, sorry, behaviorism, that is to, hey, giving them directions about how to line up to get in a bus, yeah, you might have to approach that instruction base through behaviorism, but still keeping in mind that I'm talking to competent learners.
Mm-hmm.
So from humanism, that's why you merge it by saying, okay, I'm going to merge it, but I'm still talking to and dignify. So when I say to people, stand in two lines to get in the bus, and if you don't stand in two lines, the reward or the punishment would be that we won't get in the bus. However, now I'm talking to active citizens, competent. So if they misbehave, I'm not going to call it misbehavior. I'm going to call it undesirable behavior because I'm no longer in the center of teaching moment because I'm not behaviorist. You see what I'm trying to say? The language will change from you are misbehaving to that's undesirable by my standards. However, if you're not lining up, there might be something in there. So instead of getting angry, I'll say, can we talk about this? See, yes, you can merge all of them, but you can't be line in two lines, and when when they don't do something, you get angry and say, oh, I'm a humanist when children are behaving, and I'm a behaviorist when they're not behaving. That doesn't work. You still you know what I mean? Like when you're
Yeah.
sitting inside, aircon is on. I'm a humanist. I love their competency. I look at them growing in my care. Versus they are not listening to me, and I'm gonna suddenly turn into behaviorist, and I'm gonna start giving uh, points to some other children, and then threaten them by saying, "If you don't listen to me, I'll take those points away from the board."
Mm,
But in my philosophy, I've written humanism. So
mm,
look, there's no reason to remember these words. I just remembered them, so I said it in the podcast. I'm just asking, sit down with yourself and write down what you believe in. Don't have to categorize into humanism, cognitivism. No, no, don't worry about
mm,
that. Just write what you believe in
mm.
and then discuss with your team members. Okay, Helen, what do you think? Did I say right about your can we mix those two ones?
No, it's not the right answer because I always want to be right. So I don't like
Okay,
that
go
I
on,
can't
listen.
just pick whichever one goes with making me right in that moment. No.
Okay, good. Yes, why not? Yeah.
No, but I think as my thinking is as my brain is whirring as we're talking
Mm,
and I think about philosophy from an institutional service
mhm,
level,
mhm,
and thinking about how if we're truly being responsive,
mhm.
reflective,
Reflective, yeah.
uh, but also responsive to our teams.
Mm,
We know that we've just talked about what we originally thought when we started evolved as we went along. So, reviewing of our service philosophy is really important because what we wrote
mm,
12 months ago may
mm,
very
yeah.
well not align with like our true philosophy. Like I joked earlier, I said the philosophy is that thing that sits on the wall and no one looks at. And
Mm.
you know, the only time we do then look at it is the AO's coming, so we better make sure we better make sure it's relevant. But I did before we jumped on, just quickly looked a Sequa's information sheet on reviewing our service
Mm.
philosophy. Because I think sometimes we forget that we should review it. We
Yeah,
wrote it, it's done,
yeah,
we've ticked that
yeah.
box. And
Mhm.
we know saying tick a box is so naughty, but you know, sometimes I think we get very caught up in there's a lot we have to do. And if it's done, it means I don't have to think about it anymore. But
Mhm.
I would look at reading a Sequa's fact sheet. It's the Quality Area 7 fact sheet if anyone wants to review it for themselves. If you go down a little bit, it says that why is it important to review your philosophy?
Mhm.
Regularly reviewing your philosophy ensures it meets the needs of the service and all current stakeholders. So that's another point that we need to chuck in there that the children we have evolves as time goes on as well. The
Yeah.
parents we have,
Hmm.
communities. If you're in a
Mm,
school-based service, your
mm,
principals change. So, there's a lot of factors in there that will change. With changes in children and family as at the service, as well as educators, leadership and management, kind of what I just said, it is essential that the philosophy remains a living document.
yeah.
I think it's important that we remember it is supposed to be a living document and not just the
Mm-mm.
thing on the wall.
Yeah. And therefore, for today's discussion, out of the three things that you had mentioned, personal, educational, and institutional, we
Mm,
are focusing only on the educational and institutional.
mm,
That is, in education term, what
mm,
are your core beliefs? That's a question that we should ask ourselves. And
mm,
let me say the 3 points again about what is philosophical thinking. Philosophical
mm,
thinking is firstly, ask yourself why you believe in the way you believe in. So ask yourself in education, how do I see myself? How do I see my team?
mm,
And how do I see children? um, and why I think that is important.
mm,
Nothing wrong with that. Don't be judgmental towards yourself. Just say exactly how it is. Say it to your phone if you have to, okay, and let it write it down. Number
mm,
two, then have a staff meeting to say, okay, you all brought your points. If you feel bad, let's do it anonymously. Let's
mm,
read what people think about themselves in
mm,
education, what people think about the other stakeholders, such as children in education, and what do they think about education in itself, the term. Then you read each other's philosophy,
mm,
core belief, non judgmentally, to then create something.
mm,
That is the living document. Because if I walk into your service and you say, okay, we need to listen to children, we listen to playfulness of children, we, my question is, hey, what about staff? And then I have a conflict day one, thinking, oh, we don't care about our staff. And then we look at the policies, which says inclusion of children, inclusion of children. Here's a child, here's a staff member, sorry, who feels not included in staff
mm,
meetings, but there's nothing necessary. So if that person anonymously during the staff meeting brought a good point to say staff members should be honored and dignified and blah, 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 inclusion of staff members, then in your staff meeting, you go, you know what? We don't talk about staff members. Let's create 2 lines about staff members inclusion. But
Yeah, well, I
that,
think,
mm,
because if you're thinking about an example, if your philosophy says we value our family's multiculturalism and you're doing
mm,
things like bring in your recipe, bring in a story from
mhm,
home, we want to share your culture,
yeah,
but then in your staff meeting, you're saying to a team member, this hasn't happened, I'm just pulling it
yeah,
out
yeah,
of my
yeah,
brain.
go
You're saying to your team member, hey, such and such, we don't like it when you wear your headscarf because it doesn't match the color of our uniform.
on. Yeah.
You're not being multiculturally
In
inclusive to your
that.
team. So don't ask your families to include their culture if you're not going to include your staff members' cultures. And I don't think it
Yeah.
happens as much today, but I do
No, it
remember
does.
in the past
Yeah.
actual discussions about does that headscarf doesn't match the
Uh,
uniform. Not
Yeah,
from
but it does
me, but I've
happen.
heard it from other places. And I remember, I mean, I grew up
Yeah.
in the area I grew up with
Mm.
a large cohort of Muslim families, so headscarves were never that foreign to me. But
Yeah.
and so I found it really amazing that it
Yeah.
literally was a point
Hmm.
um about how, yeah, and like I get uniform from a branding perspective. I
Yeah.
understand all
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but also let's respect the
Yeah.
individual.
And
Again,
again,
that comes back to that humanist side of ethics without religion.
ethics, but also look at the creative side of it.
Mm,
You could say your views towards that staff. You could say that. And the
mm,
staff may respond, this is the only color I have, or yes, actually, I have a different color scarf that I can wear from tomorrow. It's all in creation.
mm,
It's not an absolute term.
mm,
So,
mm,
just using your example, if somebody is uncomfortable about branding, they can talk. That's
mm,
the communication we want, the transparency of communication that you wrote in your own philosophy, Helen, that I remember the transparency of communication.
mm,
So, if I'm restricted to tell Helen something, and Helen works for me, that's not openness. But it's about not having a disagreement. It's about how to have a disagreement. If you want to talk about uniform, maybe we can talk about uniform as long as the other staff also feels supported enough to then say why, or maybe they have a different color uniform, as I said earlier.
Mm.
And then we can create a philosophy, and that's very important because we sometimes we
Mm.
miss the second step because we haven't done the step one.
Yes. I seem to remember you said something about the way the debating is done, that it's hard to do because something at
Because,
the
yeah,
confrontation,
because we are
not having the
consumed
confrontation.
by our own righteousness at times. That's where
Yeah.
the ego comes in, as you had mentioned.
Mm.
So when you say something which I absolutely goes against my core belief, it is
Mm.
going to trigger some emotion, it is going to trigger a reaction.
Mm.
And therefore, it's you versus me happens. That's the dialectical way of thinking. Dialogue would mean to have a healthy debate. The problem is never disagreements, as I say. The
Mm.
problem is that we have not learned how to have a healthy disagreement or how to have a healthy debate without putting someone's core belief down.
Mm.
And at a service, we have people who have educational belief or may be reflected, may not be reflected upon. And here we are wanting to create a philosophy so that would require us to listen to Helen, listen
Mm.
to Saurabh
I find
anonymously
it.
if you don't feel
I'm
safe.
sitting here. I'm sitting here
Mm,
running through my brain,
mm.
thinking that that idea of that respectful disagreements. Maybe
Yeah,
how do you do it? How do you not? And because I will admit, if there's someone in my workplace listening right now, I had a not great. I wasn't my best self a few weeks ago, and I
mm.
was, you know, I was mad
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because someone wasn't listening to me. I felt disrespected in the moment, and
Mhm.
then I probably did disrespect them back if I'm being really truthful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that idea of, if we could have wound that conversation back to, I think it's hard. I think that's why I'm struggling with it. How do you have that? It's
That's
fine
the
not to
toughest thing.
it's fine not to agree, but how do you have those conversations that do include those different standpoints, but still remain respectful?
That's another podcast, how to have disagreements. But that is a part of philosophical creation. If
Yeah.
you want to create a philosophy, it is not an absolute term. It is dialogical. So it is, you mentioned yourself, it's a living document. So you may disagree, agree, you may create a temporary, you may create a philosophy temporal and in the month of February, and then April, you still do not agree and you really want to have another staff meeting because something is just not working for you. So you know it or you don't know
Mm.
it. Philosophy exists in all of us.
I think that's that interesting thing about, and where it does make it tricky if it's a truly responsive philosophy to your service,
Hmm.
is that you can have two team members, or like, okay, let's use the example we used not that long ago, that completely thinks roll call is a thing where everyone comes into a room and has to sit quietly and we're not marking the names off until everyone is quiet and looking and eyes on me and being what I see
Yeah.
as respectful. Then you've
Yeah.
got someone else who's like, no, like, let's just get them in, let's mark that roll and get them out active as quick as possible.
Mm.
It's possible to have those two people working in the same workplace.
Yeah.
So then how do they mesh their ideas to, like,
Yeah.
how does that team
Hmm.
mesh their ideas? And so that, and I've just
Yeah,
like
which
taken it
which
one
is a
step from
really
one.
good example. So um,
Yeah,
it's
just,
actually a really good way to kind of recap what we've done. Is it okay if
mm,
I respond to that?
yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So let's go with staff A, who believes that people should pay attention to the educator,
Mm,
respect your educator, listen to the educator, and would not do the roll call till all eyes are on them. Yeah.
mm,
So I'm going to assume that that person, knowingly or unknowingly, is behaviorist in this term.
mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, not an absolute behaviorist, a version of behaviorism.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So step number one, that they go out and they think about why they believe in what they believe in and where it is originating from, and how do they support their views. So they might come back and say, respect your elders is something that we believe in. Children are developing, so this is going to teach them life skills of patience, of following instructions. So they are absolutely justified when they say this in a staff meeting.
Mm,
Okay. Then the other person would come in and say, "Oh, let them go because they're competent. They are getting bored. They are active citizens." As a humanist, they will say they are active citizen. I don't like to sit down after a long time at school. Why are we asking them to sit down? Or even in long day care or in school, why are they sitting down? I'm not the center of this room. Children also have the agency. Let them sign and go because children have agency. So these two people sit together. One says, I'm teaching them life skills. The other one says they have agency.
mm,
None of them are actually wrong. But
mm,
when we say, okay, who or what are we trying to achieve as a service? And
mm,
they may say, that's when the philosophy is created. We want to respect children. We want to respect educators. We want to respect every stakeholders. We asked the person who was step number one, educator A, do you feel disrespected when children are not looking at you? They say yes. The humanist might say, oh, they may not be disrespecting, they might be fidgeting because they're tired.
mm,
And that if you are able to convince that educator, then you have a next practice tomorrow. Don't make them sit down, just sign them in and go. You also ask the educator, hey, what do you actually want from here? And they may say peace and calmness. The humanist might say, can I recommend a practice which can bring peace and calmness to you? Like, yeah, let children go ASAP. And that
mm,
will create a lot of calmness and peace in our lives. So we then create not an action, we create a philosophy. That's when, and then we type it up to say, what are we actually doing? I respect my educator and I respect the fact that the educator want peace, calmness.
mm,
And I show them that the children actually do respect them through an interviewing stage where we change the practice, the children go home, sorry, the children do what they want to do. And then we say, hey, look, them not listening to you is not necessarily a sign of disrespect. Let's talk to Johnny. Hey, Johnny, do you like Samantha? Oh, I love Samantha. See, he likes you. His
mm.
behavior is not an indication of he loves you or not. That's very much what the society has sold us. If you love me, you'll do the dishes. If you love me, you'll do this. If you love, that's all movie stuff.
Were you downstairs this morning when my husband was talking?
Yes, I was. So, it's like if you love me, you will do this for me. So doing is sold a lot in society.
Mm,
But being is not. That children,
mm,
so that's how the healthy discussion, and this is just an example. I only took 20, 30 seconds to discuss that, but it is absolutely okay for you to believe in something as long as you know where it is coming from. Then you sit
mm,
down together, you put your points through, the other person puts their point through. And in my professional development, that's happening all the time, right? Like there are hundreds of people attending professional development. Sometimes
mm,
leaders and I, like you and I, would be having a Zoom session, and you'll tell me exactly why you're doing that. And I might
mm,
give you a perspective and go, oh, I can still achieve what I want in this manner. That's interesting.
mm,
And then you have a different philosophy or different way of being, also known
mm,
as philosophy, right? So the three steps are
mm,
identify your core beliefs and where they come from.
mhm,
Allow the other person to also speak about their core beliefs and where they come from.
mhm,
And then we together create it.
mm.
Yeah, we as a team create it. That's what goes on to and that is only a living document because we can then change it also.
I
Yeah.
have a controversial question.
Mm.
Once your living document is created, that your
Mm-hmm.
team has co-created together because
Mm.
it's your institutional document and or your
Mm-hmm.
service document, if that philosophy
Mm.
it goes against you as an individual,
Mm.
do you consider that that workplace is not the one for you?
You may say that, yes.
Mm,
But again, it's not an imposition of a service philosophy on you. Remember, you are a part of creating it.
mm. But
So,
okay, say you
mm,
it's been co-created by the majority of the team.
mhm,
You possibly feel like your voice was not heard in that
yeah.
co-creation.
Mhm.
I don't know. I suppose I'm just
No, no, you could be right. I
I'm
mean, this is an answer.
I'm
Yeah.
just processing I mean I suppose it comes a little bit off the back of our well-being
Hmm.
podcast as well
Yeah.
that when do you sometimes maybe
Maybe it's not. Maybe you're right.
it's
Maybe it's
right
not
for
the case.
you that once,
Yeah.
yeah, once you realize that maybe your philosophies don't align, that
Hmm.
you need to consider
But
maybe
that
it's
is
not the right
actually in
place for
every
you.
part of your life. That's not just only in
Yeah.
work. Because we are only talking about work at the moment, that's also
Mm,
in partnership, isn't it? You may not choose a
mm,
partner. You may not stay in a relationship that doesn't align with your philosophies anymore. As long as you have looked at your philosophy non-judgmentally, you've discussed it, you've critically analyzed it, not just, I like
mm,
this. No, no, hang on. Where is it coming from? To critically
mm,
analyze it. Okay. But that thing about service doesn't work for me, my relationship doesn't work for me, the place where I live is doesn't work for me, the the type of food I'm eating doesn't align with me anymore. So all of that, we always are choosing our team, our clan, right?
mm,
However, I just want to say one more time this very important thing from a different context. Maybe I'll give an example.
mm,
Most of our philosophy is not thought through. Okay, whatever you and I believe in could have been institutionalized to start with.
mm,
Respect your elders is not what you created. Trust me. It was said to you so many times that you started saying it. Sharing is caring is not what you created. It was told you. Most of the rules that we have, we just recite our past. So
yeah.
can you can continue to recite our past as long as you've stopped and go, do I believe in it? Or do I just say it? Respect
Mm,
your elders, sharing is caring, eyes on me, ta-da-da-da. Because you may identify, damn, I actually don't align with this because when I was a kid, I hated this, but I just started saying it because I'm still
mm,
angry at my past. So if your philosophy is a reaction to the past, it's not a philosophy, you're still reacting. It's not your core belief. So if somebody is able to influence you and show you a philosophy which kind of frees you up a little bit, that is
mm,
respecting elders is a good thing, but also respecting children is a good thing. And you go,
mm,
yeah, when I was a kid, I loved being respected, and I hated standing in two lines. So why am I imposing that on others? Yeah.
mm,
So then you create a new philosophy. So
mm,
you may move services, you may change schools, you may change whatever organization that you're a part of, or your whole field of
mm,
learning. But before you make that emotional decision, I'm going to call it, may not be a rational
mm,
one. Before you make that big call, just sit down and say, is it my philosophy? And if when the day comes, you go, it is my core belief and this is working against them, then it is not an emotional decision. It's a thought through decision. Please leave the workplace. Please leave the relationship. Please leave anything because then
mm.
you are, in the name of inclusion, putting yourself out there. You're fighting it. You're necessarily not even following the service philosophy when nobody's watching. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like if you
It,
don't
it
believe
kind
in
of
wearing, yeah, go on, please.
it kind of makes me think, going back to what you were saying was the process of coming up
Yeah.
with a
Mhm.
philosophy. You know, we know the first one is the thinking and the why.
Mm.
How many times do you need to ask why?
To
Like when
yourself?
you're, well, that's I'm kind of thinking because you just added in the extra layer of sometimes you need to realize your why that you do something is because you subconsciously don't realize that like that was
Yeah.
enforced.
Oh,
Sharing is
lifelong.
caring.
It's a
So
lifelong
so
thing.
like if we start with sharing is caring, but
Mm.
why is sharing is caring? Well, because it is. But then why? Like,
Why?
what is it?
Yeah. Where it
Because
is coming
that
from.
was what was told to me when I was young. But
Mm.
then why in the way of was
Mm.
why is that necessary? Like trying to think about it from that how many
Yeah.
whys do we need to
Mhm. Yeah,
so
you're
that
right.
also
Okay, so
makes
how many
philosophy
times?
really
Yeah,
tricky
how many layers are
because
there? No, okay, so
how
that's
many layers of why, correct?
yeah, two answers, two immediate answers to that. Okay,
Mm,
a response to that rather than answer because I don't know everything there is
mm,
to know. The way I would deal with it, the
mm,
how many times to ask question why. Don't do it alone. Number one, your friend
mm.
will tell you this is stop it. This is where we are stopping now. Okay, for
We're not
today.
allowed to spiral.
Yeah.
Come on.
So yeah, so I see that we can go into the spiral of
Yeah.
why. And therefore, I said it early on in the podcast. If I was to keep asking you why, you will slap me and say, "This is me. Take it or leave it." Okay, so there is a time that you go, "Okay, this is enough." But
Mm,
there is another response to it. Why are we asking that question? Because there is an outcome or there is a
mm,
way that we all are trying to navigate to.
mm,
We are trying to be an awesome educator. We are trying to have peace and calm in our life. We are trying to have progress in our life. So just see if your core belief are still this. are still supporting you in getting there, or are they coming
Mm,
in the way of you doing getting there? That's a
mm,
really good way of assessing. Why is my way of being at all fulfilling where I need to be?
mm,
Or is it creating a roadblock in who I want to be? So that's when you realize the pattern and you go, how many jobs will I change? Going back to your
mm,
example, how many jobs will I change? I keep changing jobs because I listened to this podcast. Saurabh said, yeah, change the job. So this is my seventh job in 7 months. I need to stop. Why? Why can I not align with anybody else's philosophy but just mine? Okay. So that is why that's your answer. That the why is not you keep asking because there's no answer to that necessarily. Okay. It's
mm.
the answer is determined by what you want to get to. Like there's an outcome you want to progress. Are you your own biggest enemy right here, or you want to
Mm.
just critically reflect and let others influence you,
I
or you're not
suppose that
gonna.
brings us back to
Mm,
that. We've talked a lot about how much how much we talk, which is why I've got a podcast. But
mm,
again, to have that realizations about your own philosophy and therefore be able to contribute to, say, your service level philosophy,
mm.
you really need that trusted group,
Yeah,
or that maybe that one person, two people, um, that you can ask those questions and get really honest answers. Like we are in a group chat this morning and what did we get this morning? If money wasn't a barrier, what would you do
yeah,
in regards to education and care? And then our
mm,
conversations evolve from there.
yeah,
Sorry, that's an off topic, but I use that as an example of we have a group chat with a friend who we often go in, all
yeah.
three of us, and drop
Mhm,
a, hey, I just came across this thought, or this is the
mm.
beginning of a thought. What do you think? And then we all go backwards and forwards. And
And adding to that, the conversation in those groups are not always self-affirming.
mm,
Okay, so that is why I want to recap a few important points today. So just
mm,
being conscious of people's time. There are three ways philosophies are created.
mm,
Philosophical thinking has three characteristics. Ask yourself why. Number two, discuss with your friend or team like we discuss.
mm,
And our team is not self-affirming.
mm,
So it could be something that is debatable. You
mm,
debate with someone, you angrily write angry face on the chat, but you know that those people in that group chat or in your team are for
mm,
you and stand for the well-being of you and the service. Okay.
mm,
So sometimes service wins and you have to start accepting that there are more ways of seeing things than the way you believe in. And
mm,
then you create it. You create a philosophy. So your personal philosophy, others' personal philosophies, discuss, disagree, and then create one. We talked about educational philosophies as an example to see how we have shifted our philosophies from behaviorism to cognitivism to
mm,
humanism. But there are many other philosophies that you can sit, but do not worry about categorizing them. Just write down things that your core beliefs are, and then see how your team can manage it. So I'll just give one final example, and then I would love to get your points on that, right?
mm,
You mentioned somewhere early on in the podcast about egocentrism,
mm,
and you mentioned you're going off topic, but it's actually not. Piaget has mentioned egocentrism.
mm,
Although he says at the age of 7 things start changing, and I don't believe that. I believe that we are egocentric till the day we die because we see things from our own personal view. We allow people to influence us, but we still, at the end of the day, we make our own mind, and
mm,
many of the things that we do are fulfilling to us, and therefore it is desirable by us.
mm,
However, there is a philosophy in yogic culture about human centric nature, and human are not in the center of the ecosystem. And therefore, instead of using the word human, we call it the educator. The educator is at the center of education. That's a philosophy. And therefore, educators decide what to teach, educators decide how to teach, educator decides the paradigm on what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and educators assess, educators fail, pass, and educators reprimand or provide punishment or consequences.
Mm.
Then there is a philosophy that educators are not at the center of education. So let's go back to the previous philosophy where educator is at the center of all of it. They believe in teaching moment. Oh,
Mm.
I decide what is a teaching moment. So if Helen, you are my student, I will look for teaching moment to teach you something. Yeah. Now in the second philosophy, educators are not at the center, which means education occurs from both sides. Students can teach teachers something, teachers can teach students something. So it's like a web. That's a
Mm.
philosophy, right? Now, in that, there is nothing called teaching moment. It's called learning moment.
Mm.
So the day you drive back home thinking, "By damn, I got to learn something as an educator." So in that very moment, the students became the educator.
Mm.
So there is nothing called teaching, learning moment, because in some yogic culture, we believe that if a student is not ready, you can't teach them. And if a
Mm.
student is ready, the teacher will appear from nowhere. You could teach, the animals can teach us, the trees can teach us, the weather patterns can teach us something. So therefore, this human, the educator-centric nature versus it's a web of learning, they are two different philosophies. We don't know which one we believe in unless we critically reflect on it. And
Mm.
many of our emotional well-being, therefore, this podcast is right after the emotional well-being podcast, is that many of our disappointments could stem from that we believe educators are at the center and they're not respecting me,
Mm.
versus, oh, hang on, they don't have to respect me. They were just telling me what they believe in, and I got to tell them what I believe in, and we created something, So
Mm.
this is my final take on how we could be in one without realizing that we are in one. So let's
Mm.
spend some time on it. Your point now, Ellen, what do you think about that?
Oh, how do we wind it up? My point. I think there's a couple things.
Hmm.
We, I think we need to also just recognize that within our thinking, actually some research needs to go in there because we can't know what it is. Like I said earlier, it would seem that I was a humanist from early on. I didn't realize I was until I started doing my degree.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you've got to go and do a degree, but maybe, starting to explore
Hmm.
some different things so you can help put a label on it
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
understand.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, and sometimes we can that then helps with our reflecting in understand in reading and go, oh wow, actually, yeah, I do really align with that. Or actually, I kind of align with that, but also I don't like that thing. So maybe I want to
Hmm.
do some work on
On it.
evolving.
Yeah.
So, if we go start with that thinking, I think some research
Yeah.
possibly needs to go in there with that
Perfect.
thinking,
Perfect. Yeah.
and that important us understanding why.
Right. Yeah.
Um, then your debate.
Hmm.
Still, I've written down, I've got it so we don't forget that we need to do a podcast on respectful conversations.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. We will do it. Yeah.
Sometimes when we're in the debate, we
Mm.
because we're human beings, we're passionate, right?
Mm.
We've got
Yeah.
doesn't mean either side are wrong, but
Mm.
sometimes from your view you're totally right, and also from their view they're totally right, and
Yeah.
so that clash
Exactly.
is not great.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
trying to have that debate in
Mm.
terms of philosophy
Mm.
as respectful as possible.
Yeah.
And then I suppose looking at how then
We
that
create.
creation, that true co-creation of a
Mm.
great service philosophy is everyone's. It wasn't the director sat in her office and wrote it
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's everyone's voices have been considered.
Considered. Yeah.
Also,
Well,
how are we? Let's chuck on. We're supposed to be winding up. How have we looked at including those all important children's voices in the
yeah.
creation of our philosophy?
Exactly.
Because it's not just about us, the staff, it is about those very important
And also
people that we
stakeholders.
care for. And we know My Time and Place updates, they're citizens.
Yeah.
It
And
tells us.
EYLF mentions that, and also the Akara
Yeah,
mentions that. So I'm going
yeah,
to recap this, and I'm going to just use your points, and then I'm going to quickly recap. Okay, it will take just a few
yeah,
seconds.
go.
It is important to ask the question why, and as Helen said, research it. Research means explore, ask your parents, why do we think this way? Why do we eat this food? Why, all of that. Why? Why is it important? Because the second
Mm-mm,
point, which is that you're going to have a debate, you don't want to come across as naive in that debate. You don't want to
mm-mm,
say, oh, well, it worked for me, so it should work for the others, right? Hang on a
mm-mm,
sec. You are from a different culture. We have multicultural system. We have a different dynamic. Geography plays a big role in also in those societal way of operating. So the research on why you believe in something is important for your own sake and also when you bring your points into that debate.
mm,
And the last bit is that that's when you create it, you will be okay because you know that you've debated properly, you gave it everything, and then you are creating this. So you are going in there thinking, all right, you know what? Helen has a really good point, and I'm happy to try this out for the next 2, 3 months. Okay, these
mm,
are this is a very important. And then, as Helen said, in that creation, have all stakeholders look at it
mm,
too, not just the just the leader with the AI or with just the 4 people, and then other people join in afterwards. It's everyone.
mm,
But in saying all of that, Helen, I'm very conscious of the time. And
mm.
I'm also know that or we might have not even scratched the surface of philosophical
We
things.
love doing this. Let's just dip a toe in and see
Yeah.
how we go. And then
So
we're like,
I
oh,
want to
this is
thank
bigger than
you.
we realized it was gonna be.
And I want to thank you for bringing this important conversation up and playing this game with me, and also thanking to our community, which is
Mm,
now ever growing and is willing to look at some of the things that we often don't talk about in our lives. And
mm,
therefore, philosophical thinking is
mm,
something that we need to talk more about in our life.
mm.
With
I
that
just,
statement, I want to
yeah.
say goodbye, but I want to hear Helen's
Oh,
final.
I've just got one more comment. I just
Yeah,
that kind of I just had a brainwave, and was thinking about that very beginning about your personal philosophy,
yeah.
and also I don't think anyone has ever actually asked me in my workplace, what is your personal philosophy?
Hmm.
And how great that could be for teams of that. Sorry, thinking about that step back of how do you have respectful conversations.
Mm-hmm.
If you as a team understand your individuals' mutual philosophies, you might not agree with them, but you can go, I can see their point of view because that totally fits in with their philosophy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Therefore, that may help that team when you get to that team point. You've thought
Mm-hmm.
individually, you've gone to the team. When
Mm-hmm.
you're having the team debate, it might make it easier
Yeah.
because you have that deeper understanding of
Yeah.
that person as an
Exactly.
individual.
And we don't have to
Um,
be in rush in creating a
yes.
service philosophy. Take your time. Take your time.
So I think we've left our listeners with a lot to think about. What is your
Mhm.
personal philosophy? Um, is your service institutional, whatever you want to call it, level philosophy, is that a living document?
Yeah. Well, these two
I think
questions.
there's a few takeaways for people to think about, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to add any more because I am mindful of the time, and I'll throw it over to you for some final words.
Yeah. Well, my final words are just thank you. Thank you for engaging in this conversation. It's not an easy conversation. It was not an easy
Mm,
discussion either, but it is worth my time and Helen's time, and I hope that we contributed to your time also. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are. Look after yourself and the people you love. But till next podcast, it's a goodbye from me and Helen and the team at We Belong Education Podcast. Goodbye.
bye, everyone.